Please welcome up the next panel. Jonathan Olsberg is the chairman of Olsberg SPI and a strategic advisor on film strategy and policy. During his long career, he has also worked both in production and sales and all kinds of things. Where's Jonathan? Coming. Martina Tarnström is head of acquisitions for Northern Europe at Coke Media, where she comes from an illustrious international career in acquisitions. And Stefan Borgqvist is manager TV content and VAS, and I'm going to start by asking you what that is, for Telia Sonera Sverige, which makes him responsible for consumer market products such as digital TV, VOD movie rentals, and so on. A welcome to you all. VAS?
Yes, value-added services.
That's what I thought, but then I couldn't figure out what it means.
No, but that is my group's goal is to combine interesting content outside our company to put it together with our products. One example is the collaboration with Spotify in the music industry. We try to get nice offers to our customers there. So that's
so Spotify would be an example of that.
Or Storytel or
cool. Thank you. The first question is the same as for the other panel. What are your immediate reflections? What are you thinking right now after having heard the last hour and a half? Martina, looks like you're starting to speak, so go right ahead.
Yes. I just came back from Sundance, and I feel completely shaken by the experience, because in addition to the discussion we have there, for the independent distributor, which is what I represent here, there was absolutely nothing to buy. My business relies on releasing X amount of movies every year. I buy 80 movies and 10 to 12 of them are theatrical, and I rely on going to film markets. And I went to Sundance. Last year we bought 3 movies there, and this year there was nothing. And the change was that the studios bought all the top movies, as always, but they also bought the tier just below, and Amazon and Netflix bought all the worldwide rights for a lot of documentaries, a lot of films that would traditionally been theatrical and something for me. The only thing I'm considering to buy is a movie that has an ask price of $600,000 and I can value it to 60. So there is a huge gap in my world.
That's terrifying and a bit of a bombshell at the beginning of this conversation. That's all right. Okay, I don't know how to follow up on that. Let's mull that over a little bit. And I'm really sorry that you've had this experience. Who would like to continue? Jonathan?
Okay, I don't think things are as bad as perhaps some people have said. I'm not sort of necessarily addressing what you've just said, and I think maybe we should look at the function of an intermediary, this independent distributor in this world, as to what needs to happen there. But when I'm thinking about finance, there's plenty of money around in the world. I mean, I know that there's a sort of a Eurozone crisis, but of course in the UK we don't feel that at the moment. But if you look over the next few years, I mean, there's not a shortage of money. I think what we have to do perhaps is to look at what are the potential sources of finance for the content that we're talking about, and then dig a little deeper into what's happening with them. There's mostly 3 categories. There's equity finance, which is quite rare to find, but through crowdfunding, I'm sure we're going to see very much more of that, if not some kind of explosion. There's trade finance, which is the problem, in that the players in the market that are between content producers and the consumer, that's shifting enormously, and very powerful entities are coming in. And even when they start small, like Oculus Rift, for example, which started themselves through Kickstarter, and then sold for $2 billion to Facebook. We're sort of routes to market are being dominated more and more by these big players, so we have to figure that out. And then the third area of finance is, of course, the public support system. And there are definitely new things coming out from there. But I'd just like to throw another 4th one in that we sort of don't think about very much in the independent world, but the major studios do. And that, we used to call it product placement. But basically, it's brand association. And that is to say, there are major brands around the world who align themselves to the content that we might be making, because the consumers that they're after are the same consumers that we as filmmakers are after. And of course, that's been the domain of the major studios up to now, getting money from this source. But as we as producers, through crowdfunding, etc., get more access to consumers, we will know more about our consumers, and there's a conversation we can have with brands about aligning our interests. And finally, there's one missing element of industry that's not at these panels that perhaps I'm thinking should be, and that is, so we talked before about understanding consumer behavior. There's one industry that absolutely understands consumer behavior, and they make little movies, and that's the world of advertising, and they're huge, and they have the talent that we use. Why don't we have an advertising person sitting right here?
They don't even have a word for cross-media storytelling except for campaign, right?
That's fine. Campaign means they're
but
taking
that's what I mean. They're doing it right.
Audience.
They're not mystifying it. They're just doing it every day. There is one actor that you didn't mention, or only sort of indirectly, Stefan. I think we should just face this head on. In the film industry, at whom I am pointing with my finger, ISPs are often considered to be the enemy. Which is a little bit, I find, structurally strange, because many of them, like your company, are also pay TV providers, VOD providers. So this idea that you guys are soft on piracy is a little bit counterintuitive to me as an ordinary person, because of course, if you can charge for the same content twice, you would probably prefer that to piracy, I'm guessing. But there's a vibe in the film industry that you guys are soft on piracy and that you are unwilling to contribute to film funding. Now, do you agree that the film industry is right in either of these claims?
No, I don't.
You're going to have to explain why, because that's the part we predicted.
Yeah. Yes. No. I would just like to answer and connect to, you asked us to reflect, and we were saying that, or you were talking about, we are lacking money in the ecosystem, but the ecosystem is changing, right? We have been discussing that for the whole day, and so it may be so that it's lacking in the present ecosystem, but in the tomorrow's ecosystem it will look different. So that's the first reflection. And I think it's a pity if they see us as the enemy, as you said, because in Sweden, for example, we are, I would like to say, one of the major TVOD players. I mean, we are distributing a lot of film to our customers. So for that reason, speaking of piracy, I agree that this is a problem. I mean, we like to present good quality movies to our customers, and so in that sense, piracy is a problem.
But when will you put real money back into film production?
I would like to put money where it's a little bit, but where the customer demand is. I mean, I love your ideas, for example, or your work that you have been on. The Finnish guys in the documentary sector, and your job with the pre-show, the event, and the after talks, for example. So finding the new ecosystem or new roles there, I think it could be really interesting. And for example, I think it was Comcast. I was really interested in how they invested in the pilot. It was a crime series, so they invested in the pilot series, and then they asked all the customers to vote if they would like to continue, etc. So there, if that is where the customer demand is, we are interested in investing there.
Everybody else in the industry needs to put a share of their revenue back into a film fund or something like that. Well,
why?
No, well, that has traditionally been the case. I'm not saying that they have to do it in the future, but I mean, people here who are producers who are currently not getting paid are feeling that someone has to pay. Who has to pay, guys?
Well, I mean, there's a real opportunity because I'm sitting here now desperately wanting 2 movies to release in the fall. So if anyone has it, I'm happy to... I mean, the distributor has the money, and we will happily pay the accurate value. There's a big difference between the sales companies' estimates and the real world. That's a real big issue, because then budgets and financings of movies don't relate to the real world. But distribution companies have money to buy a lot of movies, because at this point we are desperate.
Will you make the money back, though? I mean, isn't this all a symptom of like a sort of over-establishment of content?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we make a lot of money for most of our movies. A lot of the movies do not make as much as we want on theatrically, but along the line, you know, I buy rights for up to 25 years, and there's a lot of ways of showing movies and exploiting the rights, and it's my job to make sure that happens. So absolutely.
So I think we have, I mean, there's at least this narrative that money is disappearing from the ecosystem. And when we say that, we mean that filmmakers are seeing less and less. But and we're looking at things like the collapse of the DVD window. I mean, it hasn't quite collapsed yet, but within the next 5-year period, certainly it will. But also there's this additional threat that because territories and windows, that whole model is changing. There will be fewer and fewer sort of checkpoints to sell. And there is a worry that means that the grand total, the lifetime worth of the work is also shrinking. So let's just talk a little bit about that. Is this correct in your view? Because money is being made on this content in all kinds of places, but that is disconnected, as we were saying, from the producer.
I think, as we were last year, I think I said, we're in a transition period where we haven't yet figured out all of the new business models in this new dynamic. Although Netflix has. I mean, Netflix has certainly figured it out. I mean, and obviously they're dealing with much bigger, different types of projects and content to independence. But you know, that was the way of the studios 20 years ago, and then they created, you know, their independent offshoots. So at what point, maybe, will we see a Netflix independent that has figured out a viable economic model for delivering content to those audiences that might be on the fringe of their mainstream audience that are still valuable? I mean, I would imagine, Stefan, in your business, to grow your business, you need to get more consumers to basically subscribe to your services. And that probably involves understanding enough about the consumers who are at the edge of the normal ones and deliver to them a service. That's what we're doing in the independent film world.
Yeah, and in our, you know, as you stated out in the report, for example, the customer interface in our TV service is really important to develop, and we are working a lot with that. So, for that reason, it's important since all the customers are equally different, so to speak. We have a relationship with TreeArt, for example, and there we are trying to figure out really how to show the customers the diversity that we have, since they have a role there. So, of course, that's really important.
I mean, when I was asking the question why before, I think I knew the answer, and I'm not suggesting that there is no reason, but I think we need to have, rather than the stick, we need a carrot, and we need alignment of interests between the production community and the various entities who could be involved in financing the content. Because without the carrot, you know, it's really not going to work in the long term. You can't keep arm twisting companies or entities to fund something over which they have no ultimate control or involvement.
I need to ask a really specific question. You were mentioning TVOD before, it's transactional VOD, so rentals or buying, and there has been some dream that this will replace the value of the DVD window. What I hear now from people when we're asking is like, if it doesn't happen in the next 2 years, it's never going to happen. Is it ever going to happen? Do you think? Is the value of TVOD going to be equivalent to the DVD window? Jonathan says no.
There doesn't seem to be much evidence. I mean, the DVD window was massively valuable, and it would almost caught the industry by surprise. It grew so fast, 20 years ago or whenever it was, and at the same time we were getting pay TV coming through. So that period in the mid-'80s was a really unusual golden period where a lot of additional money was coming, was on the table for producers, and it wasn't always that healthy because we had a massive oversupply of content at that point. But no, I don't think it's going to replace it, and I think that It may well be that there is no single route to market that will replace DVD, but there are other ways of filling that gap, and we talked earlier about crowdfunding, and that's one of them.
No, I believe we have to do more for the customer need, for example. I mean, the releases, when we are doing the releases, for example, we have been working with the film festival in Gothenburg and in Stockholm for several years. So that is an example, so that you can enjoy the films even though you don't live in Stockholm. I mean, it's a huge. I mean, Sweden is is very locally distributed country, and some people have a long way to the cinema, and they have a couple of kids, and maybe they have moved to Stockholm, and they don't have a childcare or anything. So of course they're interested and willing to pay for earlier releases. So we have to adapt us to that, and all the interface, the GUI work, so to speak, or the how to find your content, as you were talking about, that's extremely important. Then I think I agree with you. It's hard to compensate all the way up, but we can do a lot better. I think a lot better.
What I hear you say is basically that transactional VOD is going to work primarily as a complement, as a premium window close to the cinema release.
Yeah, I really hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say the UK, there's still a relatively strong DVD market. It's just that it's different kind of product that works in the Tesco basket and on iTunes. And I definitely buy specifically for Tesco baskets also. And they still make us tons of money.
On a related note, I have to ask, we just published an interview with Malte Andreasson of United Screens, who was in our report last year, but there's a new brief interview on our website. And I asked what he's worried about in the 3 to 5 year window, and he said he's worried, just to point out one thing, he's worried about the possibilities of financing drama outside the premium windows. Who will be able to produce silly college movies? Is there, because that kind of film is probably not necessarily going to work in the cinema. Will somebody still be making ridiculous college films?
Those movies work so well on iTunes for us. It's incredible, actually, the number. So we buy specifically those very silly American comedies and the mega shark movies for that. And if you pay the right amount of money, you make money. Simple. There's still a need for everything.
Thank God for all the Sharknado makers. Yeah.
I'd like to suggest that in the next 3 to 5 years there may be a new, semi-new market emerging, and that relates to the fact that our traditional cinema experience, going to the movies to see an independent film, that the opportunities were going to become less and less over the next few years for 2 reasons. One is the Hollywood product, which tends to bounce us off the screen, is going to be very, very strong later this year, 2016 and 2017. It's been poor in 2014, and that's given the independents a bit of a false hope, I think. The second squeeze is coming from alternative content and event cinema.
Opera and things like that.
Opera, cinema,
live streaming,
or
yeah.
even, irony of ironies. Billy Elliot, which started life as a musical, then went to the theatre as a musical, is coming back into the cinema as a live stream of the theatre event and bouncing our films off those, because they're the same screens that independent cinema is going to. So my thinking is, okay, let's face the truth here. We're going to find it harder and harder to provide our consumers with the out-of-home shared entertainment experience that they get at the cinema or at one of the traditional cinemas. What can we provide to them that gives them that same out-of-home entertainment experience that isn't in a cinema? Is there another way? I know the exhibitors will hate this, but is there another way that we can, with digital technology and projection and sound and everything being what it is, create some kind of use of alternative venues around a country that isn't, where consumers aren't always in the urban populations? I don't know, but I think there are people scratching their heads trying to work that out.
Roadshows.
Whatever it is.
Businesses inviting
Yes.
film screenings in.
Well, or there's plenty of... Look, a cinema owner tells us that 60 to 70% of the time their cinema is dark. that's not being used. Maybe it's as simple as persuading audiences to come in at different times. But
That's simple.
Yeah.
But yes.
But we're not,
I just want
let's
to
try and
say
figure it out.
that we have time for questions from the audience, and there's a question right there. It is so deep, the sofa. I need to work out more. There you go. Oops, sorry. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a producer, Emma Henriks, and I'm working. And I would like to ask Stefan about this. You said they were soft on piracy, which is a huge understatement. You actually
This is understood so in the film industry, yes. They don't agree, yes.
And I don't understand, because we are bleeding, the producers, much because of this, because Sweden is the worst country in the world when it comes to piracy. Both the US and the UK don't have it in the same extent as we have. And I don't understand why you don't just turn off the traffic to like Swearfield and Dreamfield. It's a simple question. Why don't you do it?
I think there are several sides about this. First, we strongly believe in an open internet, and we don't want to.
What do you mean by that? Open internet?
No, we don't. Our role is not to shut different content.
Even if it's illegal?
When it's illegal, we are adjusting, of course, to the law, and then we will act. Yeah, the swear film is illegal, but it's not an illegal. It's not so that we have to adjust to a law to block it. But
You would earn money from that too. Your team would be much better.
Yeah, I know that, and that's why I want to say to you all that I think piracy also is a problem. I think this is a problem to our business. But let me give you an example. I think all of us could because I think it's an educational thing as well. I mean, I have neighbors, colleagues that are telling the standard story. Okay, the children come home from school, and they are saying, "Oh, today we were looking at a film today. We had a film day. Oh, interesting. Yeah, our teacher showed us the Sweet film movie, and then
We know it's like that.
Yeah.
We are working on that, of course.
I think we're not going to solve this problem right now, but I would like to say, I would like the record to state that in Denmark is always lifted up, and I said this exact same thing last year. Denmark is always lifted up as a positive example because they have turned down the access to these sites. This does not mean that piracy has been solved in Denmark. In fact, it's quite likely that a big part certainly a part of the piracy numbers, so to speak, in Sweden are Danes just using VPN tunneling to. I mean, everybody in Denmark is a pirate to the exact same extent as they are here. I'm really sorry to say. So the internet, the way it's structured, makes this work only if we close it down globally. And of course, there are some top-level ethical questions there. But surely you could do more.
Yeah, and I think we should do more together with you guys, because I think partly it's the educational thing, but we will also have to provide something for the teacher. I mean, this.
We have this thing called school bio.
Yeah, that this says a little
Don't mock it, it's really
about
good.
my age, maybe. But when I was little and went to school, then our teacher had a wagon, with a VHD and put in the film. So it's easy to blame the teacher there for lack of ethics, because I agree that this is a problem.
Well, I think for starters, you guys should all sit down at the same table. The fact that you're not talking to each other is not helping, or that you are talking to each other in this tone when you are. If we need to educate people about Swearfield being piracy, that should be paid together. I mean, you pay for it, and you guys have more money, so you should pay for most of it.
I don't think you understand the hugeness or the heavy. I mean, how big this question is for us. It's terrible, actually. It's really terrible.
Yeah, I agree. It's half the population that is that are using illegal material. I agree, and I also believe this is a problem, and I think we have to address it together, and both educational and offer good good alternatives that are legal. I think so.
I was going to ask, can I have the microphone back? I was going to ask whether there's anything in particular you want to know, but we're going to leave it at what we are all most desperate to find out, of course, how do we stop piracy? I'm not sure even Nostradamus can answer that in the next year, but clearly that's going to be one of the big frontiers, because any dime we can bring back into the economy is going to help us with this period when everything is in the air anyway. Because it's 1602, they're going to start rustling with their coats very, very soon. So we have to go to the last question. I'm really happy that we haven't sort of sorted all of these questions out, because that means we're going to have something to work on over the year. I'm asking you the same as the other guys. Make a prediction for 3 to 5 years in the future, so 2018 to 2020, something like that. What will be happening that we should be preparing for today? Martina, would you like to start?
The independent distributor will become a producer and output partner for producers. We will become an aggregator, but instead of aggregating for producers, we will be aggregating for Netflix, for example, and doing their theatrical. So the order of the windows has already changed, and the distributors will have to adapt to it.
Very good. Stefan?
I think we should really adapt to the customer needs and the change of this ecosystem, all from day-to-date releases, but also a true customer experience. Because one of my biggest challenges is to understand, where does my customers hang around? If you know, we don't have a natural way of identifying where they are. So I think in 3 years' time we will be very professional in this field.
Very good. Jonathan?
Well, in 5 years' time, I'm going to be on a beach sipping a pina colada, and I don't care about what you guys are doing. No, I think what will happen is that the securities regulations that have inhibited crowdfunding from being used as a source of equity will continue to dissipate, and that crowdfunding to get equity into projects will become a much more important proportion of the total funding pie than in the past.
And this will strengthen producers? If
it's the producers who figure out how to access the crowdfunding, yes.
But not necessarily. This is worrying.
Well, producers, it depends. Some producers will and some won't. Just because you're a producer of content doesn't mean to say you necessarily either can or want to do this sort of aggregation. Maybe there'll be specialist entities that emerge that will do it for you.
And Martina says there will be. You know what, guys? It is time. I'm going to give you some information, and then we're going to do a last big round of applause. First, thank you all for coming. It's fantastic to see so many of you here when I know you have so many meetings booked as well. The report looks like this. You will receive a copy on Exit. It's also now available on gif.se, and in about 20 minutes or less, you can find it at nostradamusproject.org. On nostradamusproject.org, you can also find our brand new blog, you can find resources, and when things happen, like everything that's happened in the last 7 days that we should have put in the report, we're going to just try to blog it. And the idea is that you don't have to follow every news medium. Like, you can go there and find just some good links and stay a little bit up to date, because God, who has time for this? But you have time for it a little bit, because we may be coming back, here's hoping, with more seminars across the year, and definitely next year here in Gothenburg. So see you at nostradamusproject.org. See you back in Gothenburg. See you at the party tonight. And now please give a big hand to Jonathan Olsberg, Stefan Borgqvist, and Martina Ternström.